All right. So let's talk about restaurants. Restaurants. What was something that maybe you read about in the textbook that was interesting or you didn't quite know about restaurants? Anybody? Yeah, so the general manager has probably a lot more things to do than you probably would have thought they would have done. Okay. What else? Oh yeah, yeah. So with the front of the house, anybody in here ever been a server before? Anybody been a server? Anybody waited tables, sort of? Okay, excellent. When you are a server, there's often a script that you have to follow, right? It's almost like you're putting on a production, and there's a script that you follow. So when you come up to the table, what's the first thing you usually do when you come up to the table as a server? Introduce yourself. Tell them your name, and then usually the first question you ask them is, "What would you like to drink?" Right? Because that's the first thing we want to go ahead and get that started. Okay. And then, like Mato was saying, there might be an opportunity to share what the specials are for the day. If you have anything that is maybe off the menu, those types of things you can talk about at that particular time. So you go get the drinks, and then you come back from getting the drinks. Then you usually take what order? Appetizers, we might recommend some appetizers if they're going to get any. If not, then we take the entree order. Okay. Now, what happens if they're just people that are just sitting, chit chatting, and catching up? They haven't seen each other in a long time and they're not ready to order. Yeah, you might give them a couple minutes and then come back in a little bit, right? Come back and check in on them again. What's a good indication that they are ready to order? They're looking for you. Okay, that's one indication. What's another indication that they might be ready? I hate that when people like wave to you and I'm like, I'm gonna pretend I didn't see you. Um, or people snap their fingers. Oh, that's so annoying. I'm like, oh, uh-huh. Okay. So in order to get your attention. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So typically, if they close their menus, if their menus are closed, right, that's a good indication that they have probably looked at the menu and they're ready to order. So as a server, sometimes you can just kind of keep an eye out for that. Okay, so we take our order, take the order, and then what do we do? Okay, when the order is ready, we take the order to them, and then after that, what's the next step? Yeah, we may double check to see how things are going or refilling the drinks, right? Um, so when I was at TGI Fridays, we had a 2 bite, 2 minute rule. That means within 2 bites or within 2 minutes of the plate hitting the table, you had to be back there asking them how everything was, right? If something is not good, okay, put yourselves in the situation that you are the guest and what they put on your table is not what you ordered or that doesn't taste right. Okay. How long does 1 minute seem? Seems like forever, like an eternity, right? Because you're just like waiting for that person to come back. And the whole time you're looking at food that you either didn't order or it's incorrect. Okay. And you can't eat it. And so that's why we had that 2 bite, 2 minute rule that as soon as you dropped it off, you came back so that way you can check on them and see if everything's okay. If everything's great, awesome. You let them enjoy the food. And then when they're done, what do? We just leave all the plates on the table until they're ready to get up and leave? No. What is that called? So bussing the table is when we clear the table completely and wipe it down and get it ready, right? When we pick up things before bussing, we are pre-bussing, okay? What is the benefit of pre-bussing? Yep, Sebastian. Exactly. So it saves you time at the end, right? It also helps keep you busy while you're working. Okay. So we pick up that table, pick up that plate. Um, and when we think about it, if somebody gets up to leave and they're gone for the day, right? Or for the, like they finish their meal, and you have all those plates and all those glassware, right? It takes you a lot longer to clean that table. Whereas if as people finish, if you take that plate away, and then as they get up to leave, pretty much all that's left over is maybe dessert and glassware. You can clean that table a lot faster, right? You also are dropping those plates off in the dishwasher so they can start washing those. They don't get inundated with a lot of dishes at the very end. When I was a server at Fridays, I remember that we had to tip out our bussers, which means as a server, a certain dollar amount, a certain percentage of my tips had to go to pay the busser as well. And I had some server friends that would literally not pre-bus at all because their mentality was I'm paying the busser a portion of my tips, so they need to work, right? They need to earn that. My mentality was if I pre-bus, then that means my busser can clean my table faster, which means what? I get more people in my seats, which means I get more tips, right? And so I also had coworkers where the bussers, if they had a choice between bussing my table and bussing somebody else's table that was full of dishes, which one do you think they went to first? They went to mine because all they had to do was pick up glassware and wipe things down, right? And so the tables that were really messy took longer, and then eventually that server would get somebody in their section. Um, and so we as a team work all together, okay? Not just front of the house with our hosts, servers, bussers, bartenders. We also have the back of the house that plays a major role in the success of the operation as well, okay? So excellent. So that's basically our script. And then as they leave, what do we say? Thank you so much. We're glad you came. Please come see us again, right? Invite them to come back. I hope you had a great time. And then that script happens all over again. And it's really fun and exciting when you get double or triple or quadruple sat. Okay, what does that mean to get quadruple sat? You have four tables that all got sat down within minutes of each other. And so now you have to get that script, you have to know where, at what point of the script is each one of your tables. And so some tables are at the first part of the script, they just sat down. Some tables are in the middle somewhere and you're waiting for their food, and other tables are getting ready to get up and they're at the end of the script. And so it's a matter of understanding and a lot of organization. One of my favorite lessons that I learned when I was a server was full hands in, full hands out. So what does that mean? Full hands in, full hands out, or opposite, full hands out, full hands in. What does that mean? Any ideas? Yeah. So full hands in, full hands out means when I walk out of the kitchen, my hands are full of something, right? So I either have a pitcher in my hand to go fill my drinks, I have the glassware, I have the drinks to go deliver to my tables, or I have food to go deliver to my tables, right? My hands are full as I'm coming out of the kitchen. Full hands in means I've got something in my hands. So as I've walked by somebody's table, oh, you have an empty plate. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up. Okay. Or you have an empty glass. Maybe you finished your glass of wine or you finished your beer. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up. Okay. Not only does that help you with pre-bussing, it makes you more efficient, it helps keep the table decluttered, right? It helps. How many of you like to sit down at your table and you've got all these plates with food on them? It makes hard for that. It makes the conversation a little bit more uncomfortable, right? It makes a little bit less inviting of an environment. Okay. Um, and so as we're doing that, we want to pre-bus to make sure that we are operating. It's like a big production every single day, every single time. Okay. What else? Any other comments about restaurants and that you learned or you saw or you read, thought that was interesting?
The controls that they have so people don't steal or don't lose.
Yeah.
Somebody order, but somebody else sees, so then it's no.
So there's no fraud or there's no stealing. Exactly. Okay, good. What else? Nothing else. Some of y'all look really tired today. Some of y'all look really tired. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that we're getting to that point in the semester or in the halfway point. The fall semester is really tough because we don't have a lot of breaks in the fall semester. We have more breaks in the spring. All right, so let's just jump through chapter 6. Okay. We have two different types of restaurants, categories, independent and chain restaurants. Who can give me an example of an independent restaurant? Let's flip it. Let's do chains first. Who can give me an example of a chain restaurant? Taco Bell, Chili's, McDonald's, Olive Garden, Whataburger, Chick-fil-A, 54th Street Grill. Yep. What else? Applebee's. Someone from the back. Burger King. Sonic. Someone said Chili's. Lots of different types of chains, right? The thing that drives me, I don't understand. I don't say drive me crazy. I almost said drives me crazy. It doesn't really drive me crazy, but sometimes what I don't understand is like how close some of these chains are, right? And so you have a chain restaurant here, and then 2-3 exits down the road, there's another chain, and I'm just like, is there really that much need for those types of like that an additional restaurant that close to another one, right? All of it is based on market analysis. What do I mean by market analysis?
They're kind of like competing against each other.
So they are kind of competing against each other. Okay. When I say I'm analyzing the market, what does that mean? When I say I'm analyzing, what is the market? With the area where the consumers are coming from, right? Typically, when we do a market analysis, we are going to be looking at zip codes. Okay, so typically we look at your zip code to figure out, okay, as these people are coming in over to this particular, I'm going to use Whataburger as my example, just because we're in the Whataburger culinary hall. Okay, so let's say I'm in this Whataburger and I notice as I run my report that a lot of people from this other zip code are coming over to my store and there's not a Whataburger in that zip code. Okay. Then when I start looking at it, I may decide, I'm going to open my Whataburger in that zip code because I've got a lot of people coming from that zip code to this one. So maybe I want to make it a little bit more convenient for them to get to that particular one. Okay. So those chain restaurants are going to open up into different markets where there's a need for them. Okay. Independent restaurants. What is an independent restaurant? Might be considered a mom and pop. Good. What else? Yeah. So there's like only maybe one location. Okay. A food truck might be independently owned. Now, a food truck might also be connected to a chain because a chain, like there is a Whataburger food truck. So when they have events, they can go out and they can provide that. But for the most part, most food trucks are like one and done, right? So they have that independent type. Good. Who can give me an example? What's that? Yeah, so it's owned by an independent person versus by owned by like a large company. Who can give me an example of a food of an independent restaurant? Now, Torchy's is going to be a chain. Big on the Banks, Bohannon's. Those are good examples of independent restaurants. Okay. Um, and then the type of service we'll talk about here in just a moment. Fine dining, fast casual. Okay. Casual dining and quick service. Quick service is basically the industry terminology for fast food. Okay. Because quick service sounds so much better than fast food. We're not a fast food restaurant, we're a quick service restaurant. Okay. So, what are some benefits of having independent ownership of your restaurant? Okay. So, you'll be able to make decisions on the menu. Good. What else? Okay. So, you get to decide what the interior, what the ambiance looks like. Because if you go into Chili's, every Chili's looks the exact same, right? If you go into Applebee's, they all look exactly the same. Whereas if you're an independent restaurant, you get to decide what is the decor going to be? What's the ambiance going to be like? Okay. What are any other benefits of an independent ownership? Yep. Get to be your own boss. Absolutely. You report to yourself. Okay. So what are some risks of that independent ownership? Okay, so you actually are responsible for the finances, right? And so if you don't have the marketing available and you don't get your name out, then you're not going to be successful. Whereas with the chains, you have that brand recognition. It's interesting. I think I was in 1990, I want to say 1999. I was a junior in high school, and one of my history teachers we were talking about brands, and the McDonald's brand, the McDonald's logo used to be the golden arches, right? And then it said McDonald's underneath it, and then it said over 1 million served. That's what their sign used to look like. And he said, in one day, they're going to drop the 1 million served, because what is that title when they have 1 million served? What does that tell the guest that's going to be going to, maybe has never been to McDonald's? If it says over 1 million people served, what message does that send? Okay, so it's quantity. Maybe not so much quantity over quality, but definitely quantity. Now we know once you go, you're like, okay, yeah, quantity over quality for sure. Okay, but if you've never been before, you're like, wow, that's really popular. I'm gonna go check that out. And he said eventually they're gonna drop the over 1 million serve. I think it went to 1 billion served at one point. Okay. And he's like, they're gonna drop that, and it's gonna be the golden arches, and it's gonna say McDonald's. And then he said one day, because of the brand recognition, they're going to drop McDonald's. And all they have is the golden arches. And that's what they have today. You don't have to see the word McDonald's on the logo to know that the golden arches stands for that brand recognition of golden arch of McDonald's. So that was really interesting. So with those risks, as an independent person, you take on those risks, right? If you're not an independent owner and you buy into a chain, it is expensive because you have to buy into that franchise. But with that franchise comes brand recognition. The one thing that I thought was interesting too is that how prior to places like Outback Steakhouse, okay, when typically there was traditionally only fine dining steakhouses, but then Outback made it a little bit more casual. So maybe the quality of the steak isn't prime. Okay. Maybe it's not that top USDA prime grade, a little bit lower grade, but still good quality. Okay. So, which means we can offer it at a lower, more affordable price. But then you have Outback that starts that um, trend of lower priced, more affordable, more accessible steaks. And that opens the door to other types of restaurants. What would you consider to be like a kind of a more mid level or lower level steakhouse? Texas Roadhouse. What else? Okay, so BJ's. Yep, they might, or like TGI Fridays might, they'll start offering a steak on their menu that maybe they probably hadn't done before. Okay, Saltgrass Steakhouse. Yep. Okay, those are chains. Any independent steak lower end steakhouses that you can think about? There's one in San Antonio that I have in my mind. Okay, Hungry Farmer. So Meat Theater is going to be more of a themed restaurant and more of like an ethnic. So it's going to be focused on Mexican food. Okay, it's been so long since I've been to Meat Theater. Awesome. This one time I was getting my beard trimmed by and this barber, and I told her I was in tourism and hospitality. She's like, "Oh, you got to go try this restaurant downtown. It's called Meat Tierra." And I was like, "Okay, great. I'll check it out." Thanks for the tip. Thanks for the insider tip. Um, no, it's good. It's good to take visitors. The Little Red Barn, right? Little Red Barn's an independent restaurant. It is more of like that mid-level steak. It's a good steak, um, and it's moderately priced. Okay. So what's that? Kindling here in New Braunfels. Okay, it's called kindling, like the kindling like you use to start a fire. Okay, cool, awesome. What's that? Yeah, is different. Yeah, that's a yeah, yeah. So that would be what we refer to as like a restaurant group. Okay. So you have the Lawton restaurant group. You also have Mad Dog's restaurant group. So Mad Dog's restaurant group downtown has Mad Dog's restaurant on the Riverwalk, but they also have the Crockett Tavern at the Crockett Hotel. They also have Prost House, which is more like German food. Um, and they have a couple different restaurants within their restaurant group. Yep, good comment. What's that? Yeah, so Papa Do's, Papacitos. They have Papa's Burgers. We don't have a Papa's Burgers in San Antonio. What's that? Okay. Yeah, so that's great. So Papa's, yeah, another restaurant group, all different types. They kind of fall within that, right? Yep, absolutely. You have Landry's as a restaurant group. Okay. Landry's has obviously Landry seafood, but what else? Anybody know what else Landry's brands fall under Landry's? Okay, so we have Landry's. We have Saltgrass Steakhouse. You have Rainforest Cafe. You have Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. You have Chart House, which is a steakhouse. I'm trying to think of what else there is under Landry's. There's a lot. But they're all under that kind of same Landry's umbrella, that restaurant group. Think like hotels have like Marriott and Hilton. Restaurant groups also have that same kind of ownership. Yeah. La Playa. La Playa. Yeah. So La Playa is going to be seafood. Like think of like Playa del Carmen, like the Mexican restaurant, like the Mexican like beach town, coastal town. So La Playa, that's where you get that kind of um, seafood coastal menu. Yep.
Oh, they do the Martin.
Morton Steakhouse. Yes, they do have Landry's also has Morton's. Yep,
I love that.
absolutely. What's that? Bill Miller's. Laguna Madre is Bill Miller's seafood version. Yep. So similar food service, like style of food service, that quick service, right? But then you've got the seafood versus the barbecue and fried chicken. Their fried chicken's really good. I think their fried chicken sandwich is just as good as like Popeye's fried chicken sandwich. It's real good. But we're going off of some tangents real quick, so hopefully you're able to follow. So let's talk about Bill Miller for a second. Bill Miller has a really interesting concept. Okay, does anybody understand? Anybody know what Bill Miller's restaurant concept is? Is the food made at Bill Miller's? Submit the commissary. So it's made at a commissary format where basically everything is made in one local location, one localized location, and then each of the independent stores place an order for how much product they need, and then that product is delivered to the store, right? And so that brisket that is being served at Bill Miller's is not smoked at the individual restaurants. It's smoked at the commissary and then delivered to the individual outlets. So that's kind of a unique perspective and service style. Yes.
Things like Morton's Atlanta,
Uh-huh.
Fleming's Steakhouse, you have chains. Are these like, I guess you would call fine dining concepts? I mean, I know they have to be profitable at some point, but are they like a loss leader or like a prestige vehicle for the main chain, or are they just like that?
No, they definitely they should not be a loss leader. They should definitely be making money. The way I would explain it for the restaurant group is in something like I'm going to associate it with hotels. Okay. So with hotels, you have Marriott. And with Marriott, you have the JW Marriott. So that would be kind of like the Fleming Steakhouse, right? Or Morton Steakhouse, the fine dining. Okay. That's the big hotel. But then in Marriott, you also have the um, Fairfield Inn, which the guest that stays at the Fairfield Inn is a different guest that's going to be staying at the JW Marriott. And so maybe the guest that would stay at the Fairfield Inn might lean more towards Saltgrass Steakhouse. So more on that affordable price point. And so those each of those brands, as Landry's, as PF Chang's, as those different larger brands umbrellas, decide whether they're going to bring on a chain or bring under a brand or buy that chain. They're going to understand whether or not it's going to be profitable, right? They're going to buy up a brand and then maybe they can implement some of their successful business operations to make that brand a little bit more successful, a little bit more known. I think Joe's Crab Shacks is also underneath Landry's. So it goes in and out. They sell it, they bring it back, they sell it, they bring it back. Um, so we talked a little bit about the chains and how the atmosphere is the same. One chain that I think is really interesting is Hard Rock Cafe. Um, and their menu for Hard Rock Cafe is the same at every cafe across the world. Doesn't matter if you're in Spain or if you're in the US or if you're in Germany, it's the exact same menu. Except there's one item that's different. They're allowed to play with what they call the local legendary burger. So they get to play with the flavor of the regions to create their own custom burger for that particular cafe. Um, but I just remember I went somewhere, I think it was in the UK in London, and it was like literally the exact same menu, right? So the recipes are the same. But we do have San Antonio, because San Antonio is a popular tourist destination. San Antonio is also a test market. Okay. So what does that mean if I say a test market?
You know, try something new all the time.
Yeah, they try something new, they put something out, see if it works. Maybe they need to tweak the recipe a little bit. And then if it works, then they will then push it out to all the different cafes. I had a general manager from one of the Chili's come and talk to my class about 4 or 5 years ago. And she made a comment that Chili's has exactly 100 items on their menu. So, which means if they do a rollout and they add something new to their menu, something else has to come off. So they always keep that 100 items. Then you have chains like the Cheesecake Factory that have spiral bound notebooks. When I was a server at Cheesecake Factory, my final exam to pass my server training was literally a slideshow of over 200 items with just the picture. And I got a notepad of paper that was lined 1 to 200 with just blank lines, and I had to write the full menu name of every single item, every single cheesecake, every single beverage on the slideshow. I had to memorize that because as a server, I had to know what it looked like in the window. So if I got the ticket that I need to go pick up 3 or 2 different items, then I need to know exactly I'm going to pick that right item. I'm not that way. I'm not going to pull somebody else's food. So it's really important.
They have like crazy training binders to take you through with all the pictures.
I don't remember how we did the training because that was 23 years ago. But and I don't remember how they did the training once the store was open. So I joined the store when the store was still closed. They were still in the opening process. And so how we trained is as they would talk about things in the slideshow and they talk about the different menu sections, like one day we'd have a training about pizza, one day we'd have a training about sandwiches. The cooks had to practice the recipe and we had to practice identifying. So they would literally line up a big banquet of tables and we had to identify the item by name and the top 3 to 5 ingredients in that particular item before we could taste it.
They have
Yeah,
so much stuff now,
yeah,
so much more. Like I wouldn't give it up. I'm like, they have street corn. They have like these pizza things, like for the advertising stuff.
yep,
Like, oh,
yeah. Their menu has changed significantly. There's a podcast that I listen to called The Consumers. It's called The Consumers Podcast. I highly recommend you listen to it. It's 3 comedians, and they talk about a different brand each week. And they actually talked about Cheesecake Factory a while back, and they had a representative from the Cheesecake Factory that came on and talked about new menu items that we're rolling out. Um, but it's a really interesting. They've done brands like um, all the different snack cakes, like Hostess, Little Debbie. They talk about the history of the brand, and then they also like taste and try all the different things. So it's cool. I had to taste all the cheesecakes. Yes, of course. I had to have at least one piece of cheesecake a day. So I knew exactly how it tasted. So how else can I recommend it to my guests if I haven't tasted it before? So I had my top 10 list and it was a legit list. I gained about 10 pounds in the first month that I worked there. Dick's Last Resort, uh-huh. Yes, that is a chain. So Dick's Last Resort is a chain, and it would be more considered like a theme restaurant because it has that same theming. The servers are allowed to be a little bit more crass and rude. So that's part of the charm, if you will, the experience. So it's,
yeah, they talk
yeah,
crazy.
I mean,
But back, like, I had my son in 2018, and I was pregnant going there, and this dude wrote on the paper, "It's not his." And I tried to put it on my hand. I was like,
yeah. Jeff, did you have a comment? Yes, that I believe was a San Antonio chain, San Antonio restaurant, and it no longer, yeah, it no longer exists. I think they closed it, but they turned the, I don't know if it still is, but they turned the restaurant into a private event venue. So you can still host events there, but not necessarily the old San Francisco Steakhouse. Okay. Okay. I'm not familiar with that with that brand, no. Yeah. All right. Where were we? We had a lot little tangents, but lot of great discussion. Um, what are some benefits of franchising and buying a chain? We've kind of talked about it a little bit already. So there's a little bit less risk, right? Maybe it's upfront. You have to pay like franchising fees and the cost to purchase that franchise. Um, but there's less risk in the sense that the brand is typically well known. So people know what to expect. What are some other drawbacks of owning a franchise? You don't get to pick the menu, right? Or anything really. This is the standard. This is what you have to do because you've purchased into this franchise. I remember when I was working at TGI Fridays, I was also a culinary major here at St. Philip's, and we were talking about plating. And to me, the presentation of the dessert was really awful. It was just so basic. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to change this up a little bit. And I'm going to maybe, rather than just swirl the caramel sauce, I'm going to poke like a little tiny hole in the package. And I'm going to squeeze it real hard so it makes it kind of squiggly. And I'm going to put that on the plate first because why? For the presentation, right? I don't want to cover the brownie. The brownie is the star. And so I want to put the sauce on the bottom. And then I'm going to maybe, instead of just this glob of S-shaped hot fudge, I'm going to maybe do something different with it, right? And instead of just taking the sliced almonds, I'm going to crush them up in my hand and put them around the rim of the bowl so it looks really pretty. And my manager was like, David, that is not the specifications. That is not the recipe. And I said, I know, but the recipe is so boring. And she said, David, you work at Fridays. You don't get to decide what the recipe looks like. This is what the recipe looks like, so that when the guest eats that ultimate brownie heaven, whatever they called it, like the Ghirardelli chocolate, right? When they eat that brownie here and they eat it in Kansas City, it looks and tastes the same. And I was like, I know, but Kristen probably was really tired of me. I was not a very good employee. Um, and so I finally was just like, okay, but look, Kristen, the recipe has a whole package of caramel, a whole package of fudge, and I'm only using half a package of caramel and half a package of fudge, and I make it look prettier, and I'm using less ingredients. And she said, okay, fine. But here's the thing. You have to tell them that this dessert is your creation. You cannot tell them that this is how it's going to be served, because the next time they're going to come in and they're going to want a dessert and it's not going to be the same way. Bing, light bulb. Desserts by David was born that day. And so when I drop out the desserts, I would say, you know, I'm a culinary student at St. Philip's College, trying to make a connection with people. And TGI Fridays has a specific recipe and specific way of doing this. I was like, but I want to try some of the things that I'm learning in school. So this is the presentation that I've given you. But when you come back, you need to ask for my section so you can come get the dessert again, right? Otherwise, you're going to get it the TGI Fridays way. So I started getting people, regulars, coming back to my section just so I could do desserts, right? And then I remember one time I had this group of people, and I brought all the drinks out, and I announced what the drinks was. I can't remember what it was, but I ended up meeting this woman, Rochelle. And she was there with all of her coworkers, her office. They were talking, they were having some kind of group lunch or whatever. Um, and they became one of my regular guests. And then about 6 months later, I had left TGI Fridays and I went to Cheesecake Factory. It was a busy Friday night. I'm in the bakery plating up cheesecakes, and all of a sudden from behind me, I hear, "Oh my God, your dessert's by David." And I turned around and I was like, "Oh my God, Rochelle." And so I went and gave her a hug. And that is when I realized that our industry is about making connections, is about making memories. And you can do that through food. How many of you can think about a time when you ate something that was so impactful and you can remember exactly where you were sitting, what the ambience was like, what the flavors of that food was, who you were eating that with, who you were sharing that meal with? All of that comes together around food. So whether you are preparing the food in the back or you're serving the food in the front of the house, I think it's really cool that we have an opportunity to be a part of that. So fine dining restaurants, um, what are some of the standout characteristics that you think of when you think of a fine dining restaurant? What's that? Okay, how everyone's dressed, how the tables are set. What else? The pricing for sure. Typically, the pricing is more elevated. Okay, a little bit higher price. They may not even have prices on the menu. That's really scary, right? You're just like, okay, I assume, right? Okay, yeah. So the order of the food service, good. What else? The ex- yeah, the quality and the presentation of those ingredients and the food. Okay, because you could have steak and potatoes, right, in lower level service, maybe like a casual dining situation. You could have steak and potatoes, but you could also have steak and potatoes at a fine dining steakhouse, and they are presented differently. Oftentimes, at a fine dining steakhouse, your steak is going to come out in the plate, and that's it. Most other things are going to be served family style. So you might have dishes where when you order those scallop potatoes, it's going to come in a dish that everybody can take a little bit and enjoy that. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. So that level of service and the intricacy of what that entails, bless you, is all part of the experience and the ambiance of the restaurant. Absolutely. So you might have some kind of light or like the overhead lights are maybe a little bit lower, a little bit more ambient lighting on the table. What's that? The Yeah, you're not gonna find a mug. Yeah, unless you're drinking coffee, right? But it's gonna be like a nice, yeah. Oh yeah, it's not gonna be a beer mug. You're gonna have glassware. Um, yep, you may have a tablecloth. You may have linen napkins, right? All those things are aspects that you would expect to see in a fine dining setting. Yes.
You're going to have, your silverware
Uh-huh.
changed. Like you have your appetizer, or you have your salad, or your meals.
Yeah.
Your silverware is changed out between courses.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So with that fine dining, either the tableware, if it's a prefix menu, where everyone's gonna pretty much eat the same thing, kind of like what we have upstairs in Artemisia's, the silverware will be all laid on the table for you, right? Because as we eat, then the silverware goes with the plate as it goes away. But other settings in fine dining, once that like silverware for the solid is gone, then before your entree hits the table, then they're going to bring in fresh silverware for you. They're going to drop it in the middle of each or in between each course, so you have that available. Yep. All right. Themed restaurants. Who can think of a themed restaurant? When you hear the word themed restaurants, what's a restaurant that comes to your mind? Mi Tierra. Okay. What? Dick's Last Resort. Good. Rainforest Cafe. Yeah. Okay. What else? Any other themed restaurants? Magic Time Machine. Absolutely. Anybody else? Yeah, actually, absolutely. Hard Rock would be a themed like a themed restaurant because they have rock and roll memorabilia. Or they have memorabilia from different artists. What's that? Yeah, absolutely. So Fogo de Chao. What's the one up in Stone Oak? Um, Chamagaucha. Yeah, those are Brazilian. They're ethnic, right? Because they're the Brazilian steakhouses, but they might also be considered themed as well. Yep. Okay. What else? Raising Cane's.
Yeah, they have like different one chicken, but like the one in Dallas is the Dallas Cowboys. Another one that's Snoop Dogg bought out.
Okay. So they may have different themes as far as like the decor. Hooters. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there's lots of different themed restaurants. You could have independent ones. There's one that I went to recently. Well, I guess they did have food. It's more a bar. Um, see if I can pull it up online. If I think it's called the Sign Bar in Austin. Yeah. So these people just collected different random signage from all these different businesses. Um, and it's called the Sign Bar. And they just have them all out on display. Different neon signs. It was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool um, collection of randomness. So I'm not familiar with 1919. It's wins like best bar in town and stuff, but it's prohibition theme. Okay. So like during prohibition, and so there's no signage, and it's down in the basement, and you don't like can't tell that it's there. Yeah. And then there's giraffes everywhere. Interesting. All right. Celebrity restaurants is another thing that I think has the trend is definitely still ongoing. What are some examples of celebrity owned restaurants that you can think of?
Yeah.
Okay, so Gordon Ramsay's. What else? Emerald Lagasse. Spado. Spago. Okay. Wolfgang Puck. Okay, gotcha.
There's quality dollar.
Nah, not necessarily. I mean, maybe if you consider it to be like a local San Antonio celebrity, but Best Quality Daughter is going to be an independent restaurant in the Pearl. It is going to be an independently chef-owned restaurant. So most of the restaurants in the Pearl area are chef-owned. So they're not going to be chains or franchises, and they are typically owned by a chef versus just like someone who's just a business owner. So that chef is the one who's driving the menu. But I mean, pretty much there's a lot of different celebrities that are buying things, bars and things like that. In Nashville, it's really popular to have bars that are owned by country singers. So having that celebrity status, what do you think some of the benefits of having that celebrity status of that restaurant? Okay, they're potentially seeing them, right? You have that brand, that name recognition. Okay, what else? Are there any downfalls to it? Okay, it's corny. It could be. Okay. Okay. Got
That's the world's famous
So yeah, but I mean that is local. I think there might be one in Austin if I remember. It started in Austin.
Yeah.
Okay. I know there's one down in the Southtown area here in San Antonio. Yeah. All right. Casual dining. So this is, I think, let me back up just a quick second. When I think of fine dining, for me personally, right, I think of it as a special occasion restaurant. It's not something I'm going to go to on a regular basis. I'm going to have a special reason why I'm celebrating. And if I'm celebrating something, typically, when you make the reservation, they may ask you, are you celebrating something special? And then they will communicate that information to your server. So if it's an anniversary, maybe with your dessert, they'll say happy anniversary on the table or on the plate with, like they'll spell it with chocolate or like a sauce, right? Or happy birthday. So they can make special occasion, like special attention to those experiences. For the casual dining, it's more things like um, your Chili's, your Applebee's. You may have an independent restaurant, whereas more casual, like for example, there's a place on the Riverwalk called Elsewhere, and they have kind of casual dining. It is kind of out of a food truck, but it is more kind of like a casual dining environment. Ethnic, what are different types of ethnic restaurants? Thai food, what else? Mexican, German, Japanese, Mediterranean, right? Lots of different types of ethnic foods that focus on that particular ethnic food. And then we also have those theme restaurants as well. Quick service or fast food. Okay. What are some criteria or some things that I distinguish a quick service from casual dining? So drive-through window. What else? It's not always bad food.
It's just like where you can.
It's maybe a little lower quality, but it's not necessarily bad food because I can tear up a 20-piece chicken nuggets like nobody's business, right? I'm just as content with a 20-piece nuggets as I am with a fine dining ribeye steakhouse. I'm not gonna lie. Although now my trainer has me on a 10-piece instead of a 20-piece. Um, mechanically separated chicken. Not always, because Chick-fil-A is fast food and they don't have mechanically separated chicken. They have chicken that is hand. Did you know they hand bread all of their chicken at Chick-fil-A? I did not know that. I had a student who did their internship, and I read that in their report that they hand bread all of the chicken at Chick-fil-A. Did they?
The bread and stuff. The bread, they changed it.
Interesting.
No, I don't like it now. I don't like their bread.
Okay. Interesting.
My cousin actually applied to be a franchise owner.
Uh-huh.
And it was like a year and a half long process with multiple interviews with her and her husband.
Okay.
They ended up getting. She's like a pretty qualified person.
Yeah.
Apparently, I guess because I want to Chick-fil-A, you get to work like 3 days a week and make a shit ton of money.
Language, first of all. But yes, Chick-fil-A, because of the brand, it does have quite the following. So when a new Chick-fil-A opens, that is a pretty big deal. So oftentimes though, like one thing that my older sister, I have six, she has six kids. So I have four nephews and two nieces from my oldest sister. But she required all of them to work fast food because you learn a lot. You learn skill, like you learn speed, you learn accuracy, you learn time management, you learn patience, you learn customer resolutions, conflict resolution, talking with people. She required all of my nieces and nephews to work fast food as one of their jobs growing up. And so it's really important. You learn those skills that can help you, right? And there's nothing wrong with staying at that level if you maybe work your way up to be a manager. I've had Whataburger come in and speak to my class, my professionalism class, and they were talking to how a manager at Whataburger could, depending on how the volume of the store is, could easily make over $100,000 as the general manager. And then if you are an area manager that oversees multiple general managers, then your salary goes up, you know. And so in fast food, there is an opportunity for you to move up relatively quickly into those management positions. When I first started, I was working at Chester's Hamburgers. So Chester's is kind of, I would say, quick. I would not say fast food, but definitely casual dining, right? So, what's that? Yeah, Chester's. I ate Chester's every single day, sometimes double or triple burgers. But I was a teenager, I could. Um, but yeah, so I worked at Chester's, started out in the kitchen. So I started bussing tables, washing dishes, and then I moved into the prep. And so then I was making the burgers, and then I moved into the grill. And then when I was old enough, I moved over and helped with the cashier. And I had pretty much learned everything there was to know at Chester's Hamburgers, except the manager's position. But because there's only 4 stores in San Antonio and it's a San Antonio only restaurant, the chances of moving up into management was relatively small. And so that's when I decided, you know what, I've done that. I've done the quick service, the casual. I want to learn how to be a server. And that's when I went to TGI Fridays. And then from there I went to Cheesecake Factory. And you learn things and you build upon those different skills as you go. All right, some different food trends. What are some trends that you all have seen over the years when it comes to food, whether it's at quick service fast food or whether it's at more casual or fine dining? Farm to table is something that is really becoming more and more popular. So farm to table, what does that mean, farm to table?
It's fresh.
Processed.
So it's not overly processed, okay? But typically, farm to table means that it comes from a local provider, okay? That cuts down on the emissions of the vehicle that it takes to get from the farm to your restaurant, right? If I order something like, let's say I'm ordering, if I have pineapple upside down cake on my menu, I've got to get pineapples, and pineapples typically come from Hawaii. And so then I got to, that Hawaii, the impact of that pineapple, the fuel from the ship to get over the ocean, and then the fuel from the truck to get it from the port to San Antonio. So all of that has an environmental impact. So farm to table really is kind of an environmental focus. And it also challenges you as a chef to create menus that are seasonal in nature. So you're not making menus with food that is out of season, which means it had to come from farther away, where it was growing in season. It provides you that opportunity to provide more fresh, um, fresh ingredients. Excuse me. Yes.
Everything is Texas sourced. So exception being wine. That's and some of that can be outside overseas from like, our microgreens, our herbs, a lot of our lettuces, a lot of our veg, we actually do upstairs.
Okay. Awesome.
So it was a big relief for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Are you still pineapple chip?
Yes and no. So I cut off the pineapple that was growing. On the table on the third floor, that the planter that's in the middle that has the like kind of spiky, those are the pineapples that are growing. I bought one, it was partially grown, but then I had to cut it off because it was pretty much um, dead. Um, but I cut the pineapple open and it still smelled sweet like a pineapple. It just was not very, it was not edible. Um, yeah. Any other food trends? So farm to table. What else? What? Fusions, absolutely. So one of my favorite fusion chefs right now is Leo Davila. He's here in San Antonio. He closed his restaurant and now he opened the Anacacho, which is the coffee shop and bourbon bar inside the St. Anthony Hotel. And he has a lot of Mexican and Asian fusions. So really good. I went to a dinner at St. Anthony a couple weeks ago, and he had a hibiscus mole. Oh my gosh, it was so good. I could have just eaten the mole by itself. But yeah, the fusion restaurants are definitely, as we take those cultures and okay, what works from this culture, how can we mix it together to create something new in that fusion? Especially with that chef perspective, understanding how different flavor profiles go together allows you to create those fusions. I always say that cooks cooks can prepare the recipe, chefs make the recipe. And so that's why it's really important for those of you who are culinary, especially, and also baking and pastry too as well. But culinary, like if you understand the foundations, then you can break those rules and figure out what you can do to make things a little bit differently. But you have to understand that foundation first before you can fuse things. All right.
Barbecue locally, kind of in the last few years, not many places like food trucks and stuff.
Okay, so I think food trucks as a trend itself go breaking away from what we call the brick and mortar. So breaking away from the traditional standalone brick and mortar restaurant and maybe having that food truck, it gets your product out there. But they also are typically more independent. They're not always cheaper. I went to a Egyptian food truck in Austin, and for lunch it was like $85 for two people. I was like, I wasn't paying. So but I was just like, we would not have eaten here if I was the one paying. Yes, sir. Okay. Barnett's Midnight Provisions. Okay. So they're designed for like the late night crowd. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Cool.
On West Avenue, on West Avenue.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. Okay. Nice. Cool. Excellent. Something else, another restaurant that I went to recently, and I've seen this concept. If you think about like the old when I think of old school days of going to the mall, there, of course there was the food court, right? So you had all the different types of food. So food court style establishments are popping up and becoming more a little bit more elevated. So of course you have the food hall at the Pearl that has a couple different concepts to it. There's one we went to in Houston before a comedy show, and there was probably about 18 to 20 different kind of restaurants and concepts within this area. It was really cool. Pullman Market is another area over at the Pearl. Pullman Market, they have a small market, like a small grocery store with locally sourced produce. They have gelato. They also have they bring in product and they use the entire product. So, for example, they'll bring in an entire cow and then they'll use the beef tallow to make the tortillas that are being sold at Mesquite, or if you just want to buy the tortillas, you can. They also have ceviche. They also are dry aging their beef and their products, so you can go and you can see the dry aging process. They also have a burger concept. A Fife and Farro is their pasta, kind of Italian pasta and pizza concept. Mesquite is more of the Sonoran Mexican food, like Sonoran food, like from Arizona type. So it's a little bit different than our Mexican food that we have here. And then you have Isador, which is more of their fine dining concept, where they'll have steak, duck. They'll have different menus. And then their really cool concept they have is called Nicosi. Nicosi is definitely, in my opinion, a special occasion restaurant because I think it's about $135, $150 per person for an 8-course dessert bar. They do not allow cameras. So when you go, they give you a piece of tape that will cover both your camera in the front and your camera in the back. The whole purpose behind it is that it is designed to keep you in the moment and keep you engaged. And so it's a U-shaped bar that you can kind of see in the pictures that are scrolling. And all of the desserts are made right there in front of you. And the chef will discuss it. They will talk about the ingredients that go into it in each one. They do have an alcoholic and a non-alcoholic, a mocktail pairing. And it's 4 courses with 8 different desserts. And they move you through sweet, salty, umami, and bitter. So there's an appetizer and an entree. They call it an entree, but it's a little bit larger. Well, it's not what you would think about an entree if you're eating like a steak or something. But they move through an appetizer and an entree portion of each flavor profile. It's really cool. I did have an opportunity to experience it, and it was a really neat experience. So if you're looking for kind of a special, unique thing to do, the menu changes, I think, every quarter, every 3 to 4 months. They make it with new, fresh stuff. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns about restaurants? How many of y'all knew there was so much to think about when it comes to restaurants? It's a lot. Okay, it is a lot. Even though we think about the restaurants that we go to on a regular basis, we also there are opportunities for you. I think about the correlation to when I travel. I typically am going to stay in a certain level of hotel because that's where my budget allows, right? But I could definitely get a job or work in a level of service that's higher than what I can necessarily afford. Same thing. If going to a special occasion restaurant or a fine dining restaurant is not necessarily within your budget on a regular basis, but working there and getting those skills and learning that is really a cool opportunity. And then maybe you can take those skills and figure out how maybe you can make it a little bit more affordable or more cost effective and offer that kind of lower level of service as far as the price point and the menu to make your menu more accessible. All right, that is all I have. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you on Wednesday.